I told you that your favorite childhood movies were secretly teaching you occult magic? No, seriously, what if the NeverEnding Story, Labyrinth, and the Dark Crystal weren't just nostalgic fantasy flicks with muppets, but full-on occult initiation rituals disguised as bedtime stories? You might be thinking, come on, those were just harmless kids movies, right? A flying dragon, David Bowie in very tight pants, some weird bird lizard things, right? I used to think that too, until I rewatched them as an adult and it blew my mind, because buried underneath all the puppets are occult symbols, connections to secret societies, references to Aleister Crowley, who's been called the wickedest man in the world, thelemic magic, alchemical transmutation, initiations, and enough esoteric philosophy to make your Sunday school teacher pass out. But it goes further than that, because is it possible one of these films has eerie parallels to a real occult ritual performed by a literal rocket scientist, a guy who helped us get to the actual fucking moon, and L. Ron Hubbard? Yeah, you know, the guy who founded Scientology. Why is no one talking about this? Were these films seeding occult symbolism into young minds to brainwash and control us, or was it the exact opposite? Were they actually trying to break you free, to wake you up to a truth the world doesn't want you to remember? That's what we're gonna unravel right now, because once you see the real meaning behind these stories, the hidden layers of magic power, shadow work, soul alchemy, and spiritual rebellion, you won't be able to unsee it, and maybe you're not supposed to. So let's go. My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian exposing hidden information to wake the world the hell up, and today we're gonna start with the NeverEnding Story. You remember that one, right? There's this bullied kid with the book that sucked him into a magical land full of racing snails, rock biters, a luck dragon that looks kind of like your grandma's Shih Tzu, and a childlike empress who needs a new name.
He has to give me a new name.
Just a fantasy flick, right? Wrong. Now, here's a very quick refresher for those who haven't rewatched it since VHS tapes were a thing. Bastian is this lonely kid dealing with the loss of his mother and school bullies. One day, he hides up in an attic with a very mysterious book called The NeverEnding Story. As he reads it, we follow the adventures of a warrior named Atreyu, who's on a mission to save Fantasia from an evil force called the Nothing.
He is our only hope. His name is Atreyu.
The twist is that Bastian slowly realizes that he's part of the story, and the only way to save Fantasia is to give the Empress a new name and rebuild the world through the power of his wishes.
Call my name.
But what if I told you this film was actually a coded initiation through hermetic magic, spiritual warfare, and literal Crowleyan occultism? And it all starts with a symbol you probably just thought was just a cool necklace. Remember the magical amulet called Orin that Atreyu wears? Two snakes, one light, one dark, intertwined in an endless loop. Now, as a kid, you probably just thought, oh, cool necklace, but it's way more than that, because that symbol is a double Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is one of the oldest mystical symbols in existence. It represents eternity, cyclical rebirth, and the fusion of opposites. It's everything and nothing, birth and death, destruction and creation, all wrapped into one. It's been used by alchemists, hermeticists, Gnostics, you name it, as the symbol of ultimate transformation. Now, in the NeverEnding Story, they don't just use one Ouroboros, they use two interlocking snakes, one dark, one light, reflecting each other, duality mirroring unity. Coincidence? Hell no. See, the NeverEnding Story is based on a German book, and Michael Ende, the author, was playing with some very serious esoteric fire. But it gets better. I bet you didn't know that there was a secret on the back of the Orin. Now, you wouldn't know this unless you read the book, but if you flip Orin over, you find something written on the back. The English translation of the book says, "Do what you wish." Now, the director of the film, Wolfgang Petersen, he wanted to soften it even more and tried to make it say, "Do what you dream." But here's where it gets mind-blowing. That inscription was originally written in German, and it doesn't say, "Do what you wish." It says, "Tu was du willst," which translates more accurately to "do what thou wilt." Wait, hold on. Now, where have we heard that before? Oh, right, that's the central law of an actual occult religion. Enter Aleister Crowley, the man dubbed the wickedest man in the world, founder of a religion called Thelema, and proud member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the secret society that birthed half of Western occult tradition. All right, you ready for things to get absolutely crazy here? Because Crowley claimed he channeled a non-human intelligence named Ivas, who dictated to him the Book of the Law, which is the sacred scripture of Thelema. In fact, this book is so fiery, it tells the reader to destroy it after reading. Obviously, I didn't follow the rules. And guess what the book says? "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Yeah, that line. The exact line is engraved into the soul of Thelema, the occult religion birthed by Aleister Crowley, and now it's on the back of the Orin in a children's book. Coincidence? Hell no. Now see, modern Satanists, edgy teenagers, and half of Tumblr often twist do what thou wilt into meaning do whatever you want, follow your pleasure, do what feels good, the occult version of YOLO. So is the NeverEnding Story telling kids to become hedonistic Satanists? Definitely not, because that's not what Crowley meant at all, and it's not what Michael Ende meant either. See, Crowley's actual teaching is that do what thou wilt isn't about indulgence, it's about discovering your true will, your divine purpose, your soul's literal reason for existing. Not do whatever you want, but what your essence came here to do. And what does Michael Ende say about all this? He literally confirms it directly. Here's a quote from Ende himself. Do what you dream. This inscription is really the opposite of what the message of my book means. The sentence, tu was du willst, originally came from English, namely by the writer Aleister Crowley. And there it says, do what thou wilt. All right, that's not speculation. That's the author saying it came from Crowley. And just in case you thought maybe he was unfamiliar with the source, no, Ende was into mysticism and reportedly even owned Thelemic material, including Crowley's works. This was very much deliberate, and it gets even crazier because people love to misinterpret that phrase, and guess what? So does Bastian in the book. See, in the book, Bastian misunderstands the inscription, kind of like everyone else. He thinks it means he can do whatever he wants, indulge his whims, wish for power and vanity and control. In the book, there's a lion called Grogramen, a symbol of higher wisdom, and he literally gets pissed at Bastian for thinking it means do what you want. And Michael Ende lays it all out crystal clear. The do what you dream is the wrong interpretation. It is precisely this error Bastian is subject to and why he cannot find his way back from Fantastica. He also thinks at first that it's about doing what he wishes, longs for, wants to do. The lion Grogramen gets angry when Bastian tells him this interpretation. To find one's true will does not at all mean doing what one wants. All right, whoa, hold on right there, because he just dropped another occult theme central to Thelema. Find one's true will? Well, what's the true will? Michael Ende writes that it's your own deepest secret and you yourself don't know it. See, one of the core purposes of Thelema is to discover your true will. Aleister Crowley wrote, a man who is doing his true will has the inertia of the universe to assist him. And want to know something even more shocking? Michael Ende hated the movie. He was so angry about the changes to his story, including the way this core teaching was flattened or misunderstood, that he actually sued the producers and tried to shut down the film's release. He even demanded that his name be removed from the opening credits. But the movie left just enough of his original message in place that the occult initiation is still visible if you know what to look for. But if you thought that was crazy, buckle up, because what comes next makes everything else look like Sesame Street. See, at the end of the NeverEnding Story, there's this very climactic moment where lightning is crashing, the world's falling apart, Fantasia's literally dying, and Bastian is told the only way to save it is to give the Empress a new name.
Call my name!
Now, doesn't that seem kind of strange? Well, what does he do? He runs to the window and screams something into the storm. And every kid watching went, wait, what did he just say? Because the audio is very garbled, it's unclear. But what he actually said is in the script and in the book. He shouts, Moonchild. I'm sorry, what? Why on earth would a grieving little boy name the savior of a collapsing fantasy realm Moonchild? Well, here's the shocker, because Moonchild is the name of a 1923 occult novel written by, you guessed it, Aleister Crowley. And in Crowley's story, a Moonchild is a magical being prophesied to be born from a spiritual war, a literal divine avatar meant to usher in a new eon, which is a new phase of reality. We're not talking special girl with sparkles, we're talking full-blown magical messiah territory. So when Bastian names the Empress Moonchild, he's not just picking a cute name, he's reenacting the symbolic rebirth of the divine feminine through a magical word to save the universe. And yeah, that name is dripping in in occult significance. The moon represents the subconscious, the divine feminine, the dream realm, intuition, cycles, initiation. So what the hell is all this doing in a children's movie? But wait, because it gets so much weirder, because guess what? Moonchild isn't just the title of Crowley's book, it's also the centerpiece of one of the most insane real-life occult rituals ever recorded, the Babylon working. All right, let me explain this madness. In 1946, in the goddamn Mojave Desert, a rocket scientist named Jack Parsons, yes, a literal rocket scientist who, get this, was partly responsible for us getting to the moon and even has a crater on there named after him. So he teamed up with L. Ron Hubbard, yeah, the founder of Scientology, and said, you know what would be fun? A full-blown magic ritual to summon the goddess Babylon and manifest a moonchild into the world. I mean, seriously, think about this. The guy who helped invent rocket fuel, who literally helped us get to the moon, tried to conjure a divine feminine messiah using thelemic rituals with the man who would later start the world's most litigious UFO-themed religion. This actually happened, like historically documented. They were trying to manifest the goddess through ritual to create a moonchild, a being that would reshape humanity. And here's the kicker. Even Aleister Crowley, the guy who invented this stuff, thought they were totally crazy. He literally wrote, apparently Parsons or Hubbard or somebody is producing a moonchild. I get fairly frantic when I contemplate the idiocy of these goats. Yeah, so here the wickedest man in the world looked at his own magical fanboys and went, yeah, this is too much. But did Parsons stop? Of course not. He went full-blown chaos wizard, and L. Ron Hubbard, surprise, surprise, scammed him, ran off with his girlfriend and his money, and later started a billion-dollar religion that now won't stop emailing Tom Cruise. But nonetheless, think how crazy it is that the literal name Moonchild, shouted by a kid to save the universe in the NeverEnding Story, was first invoked by occultists trying to manifest a spiritual avatar of the divine feminine to transform the world. A real-world Moonchild ritual was performed by a man who helped take us to the moon, and as if the story wasn't insane enough, guess how Jack Parsons died? He exploded. Seriously, the guy literally blew up in his own home in 1952 when working with explosive chemicals. They say it was an accident, but others speculate that powerful people wanted him gone. But there's another secret here, because in Thelema, Crowley wrote that we were entering a new phase of existence called the Aeon of Horus, aka the Age of the Crowned and Conquering Child, a divine archetype of the sovereign self, unchained from external authority, not bound by dogma or old religion. The child who rules by self-determination. Crowley wrote, for the whole universe and all that in it is. What is it but the infinite playground of the crowned and conquering child, of the insatiable, the innocent, the ever-rejoicing heir of space and eternity? So think about this. Is it a coincidence that the savior of Fantasia is literally called the childlike empress, whose name ushers in a new phase of existence in Fantasia, which is the infinite playground of human imagination? Because the core message of the NeverEnding Story is this: imagination creates reality, period. This isn't just about reading books or believing in yourself. This is a coded crash course in occult manifestation magic. And what is magic? Aleister Crowley defined it like this: magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. And that's exactly what happens in the movie. Fantasia is literally powered by human dreams. It exists because people imagine it. And the terrifying force that's consuming it, it's called the nothing. As one character says, people have begun to lose their hopes and forget their dreams, so the nothing grows stronger. The nothing is what happens when the human spirit collapses, when imagination dies, when the creative spark is totally snuffed out. And here's where it gets dangerously powerful, because the only person who can stop the nothing is a child in the real world.
You simply can't imagine that one little boy could be that important.
See, at the end of the film, after everything's been destroyed, the Empress, now reborn as Moonchild, yeah, we're still not over that one, she gives Bastian a single grain of sand, the last fragment of the universe. And she tells him, Fantasia can rise anew from your dreams and wishes, Bastian.
Fantasia can arise in you from your dreams and wishes, Bastian.
She says he can have as many wishes as he wants, and that the more wishes you make, the more magnificent Fantasia will become.
And the more wishes you make, the more magnificent Fantasia will become.
All right, think about that. This kid's will and imagination literally rebuilds the universe. That is straight up hermetic creation magic. The NeverEnding Story echoes the principle, as above, so below, as within, so without, which means the inner world, mind and spirit, can shape the outer material world. In fact, as above, so below is embedded within the Orin itself. The light and dark serpents represent the intertwining of the human world and the world of Fantasia, or the outer and the inner. Now, I want you to do something right now. I want you to look around you at your chair, your phone, the screen that you're staring at, and really think about how all of it started as an idea in someone's imagination. Everything physical that you interact with was once an idea in someone's head. Every physical piece of technology or work of art or music or whatever was once an idea. So don't tell me that imagination isn't real, because it's the most powerful force in existence.
And my first wish is...
So when Bastian starts making wishes, he literally imagines a new reality into existence, one wish at a time. Now, in the book, every wish he makes costs him a memory of the real world. And that's a whole other layer, which is about don't get lost in fantasy or you'll forget reality. But the message remains. Our true will and imagination can literally shape reality if we have the courage and wisdom to use it right. It's basically telling us that we're all magicians at heart, co-creating the world with our thoughts and will. And the movie doesn't even try to hide the stakes. It straight up reveals a full-blown occult war happening right now between our power to set ourselves free versus the forces that want to control us. In one of the most terrifying exchanges, the wolf-like villain called Gmork confronts Atreyu and basically monologues about his evil plan. Gmork says, "I am the servant of the power behind the nothing." In the book, it's revealed he works for mysterious beings called the Manipulators. And why help the nothing? Gmork says, because people who have no hopes are easy to control, and whoever has the control has the power. Seriously, A Wolf in a So-Called Kids movie just laid out the entire blueprint for authoritarian control, fascism, and spiritual enslavement. And most of us never noticed. But as adults, that line should hit like a freight train. People who have no hopes are easy to control. This is the real occult war being revealed in plain sight. Right there in a kid's film. Because on one side, you have those who want you to awaken, to discover your true will, to create, to imagine, to manifest dreams into reality, to become what you really are. But on the other side, you have the people who want your mind empty. They want you passive, docile, distracted, numbed by entertainment, paralyzed by fear, buried under mountains of propaganda, drowning in self-doubt, and starved of meaning. They don't want you dreaming. They want you scrolling, consuming, obeying, forgetting. They want your inner fire totally snuffed out into nothing so they can rule over the ashes. Gmork is revealing a psyop in Wolf's clothing. Watch the news, watch the ads, watch how fear and apathy are literally weaponized here. And if you're not careful, you become part of the nothing too. A walking ghost, alive but empty, easy to control, floating through a world you've been told not to question. In the book, when the inhabitants fall into the nothing, they become lies in the human world. The NeverEnding Story wasn't warning us about losing Fantasia, it was warning us about losing ourselves, and the wolf told you how it's done. Gmork is the dark force that wants us all to give up and become nothing so that we can become dominated and sold on lies. Atreyu, to his credit, faces that demon, and in the movie slays the beast, and symbolically he overcomes fear and nihilism with courage.
I'd rather die fighting! Come for me, Gmork!
The inner wolf is defeated, pretty heavy stuff. But as kids, we just thought, hey, a scary wolf dies, yay. But there's one moment, and it didn't really hit me until I watched this movie again as an adult. And that's the moment when Bastian realizes that he's not just reading the story, that he's in the story.
Is it really me?
And then the Empress turns to the camera and breaks the fourth wall and says, just as he is sharing your adventures, others are sharing his. The movie was telling us, not Bastian, us, that we're part of the story too. Now, I gotta be honest, when I rewatched this as an adult, I was high as fuck, and this part blew my mind. That's not just Deadpool breaking the fourth wall for lols. This is the principle of reflection, of the one mind manifesting through all layers of reality. That moment is the film handing you a mirror and saying, wake the hell up, you're not outside the story, you are it. You're literally in the story right now. Now here's where you just need to pause for a second and appreciate how absolutely crazy all this is. In the middle of the Reagan era, where parents were losing their damn minds over Dungeons and Dragons, we were out here watching a movie that had Aleister Crowley and occult philosophy baked right into it. Why? Because it was wrapped in fantasy. It had flying dragons, glittery empresses, and sad boys in attics. And honestly, it's brilliant. See, I was raised in a very strict Christian household, and if they knew all these connections were there, there's no way in hell I would have been allowed to watch it. But it slipped through the control systems. As a kid, I was obsessed with this movie. I had the VHS on repeat. In fact, even today, it's my all-time favorite movie. And look, this film is absolutely littered with occult symbolism. We didn't even touch the scene that traumatized an entire generation, you know, the one with Artax in the Swamp of Sadness, depression as an existential death trap, or how about when the hero literally confronts his true self at the mirror in the Southern Oracle, like a full-blown mystical initiation ceremony. And there's so much more, but we gotta move on because The NeverEnding Story was not the only kids movie with occult themes hiding in plain sight, because what comes next is a Jim Henson classic that's basically alchemical magic with puppets. Let's talk about The Dark Crystal. All right, if you thought the occult references in The NeverEnding Story were crazy, get ready for this, because The Dark Crystal is a full-blown mystical allegory wearing a puppet mask. Now, if you haven't seen it since childhood or ever, get ready for this. Now, I'm going to give you a quick review of this kids movie you thought you were watching, a little refresher. On the alien world of Thra, there's a magic crystal that got cracked a long time ago, splitting one divine race into two opposing species. The mystics, or Uru, which are gentle, slow, hippie hermits, and the Skeksis, decaying, power-obsessed vulture demons who look like they escaped from a Hellraiser movie about birds. So the world is dying, but a prophecy says that during the Great Conjunction, which is a rare alignment of Thra's three sons, a Gelfling will heal the crystal and restore balance. Jen, an orphan Gelfling, is kind of this accidental messiah who's sent on a quest to find the lost shard of the Dark Crystal and put the world back together.
I'm not ready to go alone. All right? Alone, then.
Sounds like a classical fantasy adventure, right? Wrong. Let me be clear, The Dark Crystal doesn't just hint at occult references, it shouts it through a megaphone. I mean, this movie opens with a prophecy and ends with a freaking planetary alignment and ascended light beings. How did we miss how occult this was? Well, probably because we were distracted by cute gelflings and terrifying vulture dudes. Let's break down the symbolism because Henson and his team went deep into esoteric lore on this one. All right, let's start with the central device here called the Great Conjunction, which is the alignment of the three suns, and this happens once every 1,000 years. Now, if you think Great Conjunction is just fantasy mumbo jumbo, the truth is that that's a real term, straight out of astrology and alchemy. In astrology, a Great Conjunction, usually of Jupiter and Saturn, marks the end of an era and the beginning of a new one, major transformation, upheaval, rebirth. And in alchemy, it's even deeper. So let's talk about alchemy, because it's not what you were told. See, you hear alchemy, and what do you think of? Some crusty medieval wizard trying to turn lead into gold in his basement while forgetting to shower for 3 decades or something like that? Well, the truth is, the real alchemists weren't just looking to get rich. They were trying to transform the soul. See, alchemy was a spiritual science, a symbolic technology for burning away illusion and purifying the self and turning your messy human chaos into something divine. Before journaling and chakra memes and TikTok self-help, the alchemists were doing the real work and writing it in symbolic code so they didn't get burned at the freaking stake. Now, if this sounds like woo-woo to you, mystical nonsense, then think again, because Carl Jung, the Carl Jung who's the father of analytical psychology, he was obsessed with alchemy. Not like interested in, not read a few books, obsessed. Carl Jung wrote, "Only by discovering alchemy have I clearly understood that the unconscious is a process and that ego's rapport with the unconscious and its contents initiate an evolution, more precisely, a real metamorphosis of the psyche." All right, what the hell does all that mean? In other words, Jung believed that alchemical texts were not just about physical gold. He said they were symbolic blueprints for understanding the unconscious mind, integrating the shadow, and becoming a whole self. To Jung, alchemists were the original depth psychologists writing about soul transformation, and the only language they were allowed to use, symbols. So when I tell you that The Dark Crystal is about alchemy, I don't mean there's a wizard brewing potions in a cauldron. I mean this movie is literally showing you step by step the process of spiritual purification, cosmic balance, and self-transformation with freaking puppets. So remember, the entire plot of The Dark Crystal revolves around something called the Great Conjunction. Well, in alchemy, the term conjunctio, or conjunction, refers to a critical step in something called the Great Work, which is the union of opposites into a harmonious whole. And guess what? That's literally what this movie is about. Not metaphorically, literally. Now here's the big twist, spoiler warning for a 40-year-old puppet movie. The two opposing races, the gentle monk-like mystics called the Uru, and the horrifying power-hungry Skeksis, are split halves of one original being, the Urskeks. So when the crystal cracked, the Urskeks were divided into the Uru and the Skeksis, one light, one dark. Sound familiar? See, only when the crystal is healed during the Great Conjunction do they merge back together, becoming whole, enlightened beings. This is Alchemy 101. The famous alchemist phrase is solve et coagula, meaning to dissolve and recombine. In other words, break something apart, purify it, then recombine it into a higher form. And that's exactly what happens in the Dark Crystal. The Urskeks split into the Uru and the Skeksis, and at the end, during the Great Conjunction, the missing piece of the Dark Crystal is restored, and the Uru and Skeksis combine into the Urskeks. The Skeksis, who are the villainous bird lizard overlords, know this prophecy well, and they are terrified of it. See, as the Triple Sun event approaches, these greedy, decaying beings chant, "We will live forever."
Now we will live forever.
See, they're in their castle trying to magically will themselves immortality. They fear the conjunction because it could mean the end of their unnatural rule. They literally stole their extended lives by draining others. The Skeksis represent fascism. They are a regime built on control, decay, consumption, now watching their power slip away. The Skeksis represent ego inflation. They are the fear of change. They are the part of UN society that would drain others dry instead of surrendering control. They're dictators, death cults, narcissistic systems that cling to life through domination. And what's the only thing that defeats them? Integration. Not war, not violence, not another fascist with a different flag. Wholeness is the answer. See, the missing shard is returned to the crystal just in time, and the Skeksis and mystics begin to fuse together. Two opposing forces, light and dark, shadow and soul, merge back together, and out of the brokenness, the Urskeks are reborn. The newly reformed Urskeks literally say to Jen, "We are again one. Now we leave you the crystal of truth. Make your world in its light."
We are again one.
Then they ascend in a freaking beam of light and disappear to a higher realm. Did a puppet movie just show us beings achieving cosmic enlightenment and ascending beyond the material realm? Yeah, it did. See, at the heart of alchemy is what they called the Great Work, or magnum opus. And it wasn't about making gold out of metal, not just about that. It was about making gold out of yourself. The Great Work was the sacred process of breaking yourself down, purifying your soul, and rebuilding something divine, something whole. And the goal of alchemy was the philosopher's stone. Now, this wasn't about a literal rock. The stone was a symbol. It represented the perfect self, the union of opposites, the healed psyche, the spark of godhood realized. The Dark Crystal ends with the great work of alchemy completed with the Great Conjunction, two opposite races recombined into one golden, enlightened race, the Urskeks. This is all a metaphor for what's going on in your own psyche. The Dark Crystal itself, once cracked and dark, becomes whole and pure again, effectively becoming the Philosopher's Stone, a source of healing and harmony. Wounds are healed, the land that was dying bursts back into life, and it gets even wilder because you think this was just a coincidence? Hell no. Jim Henson was into Esoterica, and he actually had some books as required reading for those who worked on the movie. One of those books was called Seth Speaks, which is, get this, a collection of supposedly channeled teachings from an otherworldly entity named Seth, dictated through Jane Roberts. Yeah, channeled, as in contacted with a higher being. Does that sound familiar? Because suddenly we're back in the NeverEnding Story territory, aren't we? Remember where Aleister Crowley claimed to channel Ivas, who dictated the Book of the Law, the very book that contains the message inscribed on the Aron, do what you will? The screenwriter of The Dark Crystal, David Odell, said Jim Henson was also a spiritual searcher. Before we started work on The Dark Crystal, he insisted I read a book called Seth Speaks. Seth was a multi-dimensional male being outside time and space who dictated monologues on metaphysics through Jane Roberts when she was in a trance. The spiritual kernel of The Dark Crystal is heavily influenced by Seth. I've always felt the idea of perfect beings split into a good mystic part and an evil materialistic part, which are reunited after a long separation, is Jim's response to the teachings of that book. Now, how crazy is it that in both cases, Seth Speaks in the Book of the Law, we have films being shaped by messages from entities beyond this dimension? Now, look, I'm not necessarily saying that these were or weren't actual otherworldly entities. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Maybe it was just their higher self speaking through them in symbolic form. But either way, they were channeling something, and the fact that this stuff ended up influencing children's movies is still pretty damn mind-blowing. In the book Seth Speaks, Seth says, "The soul knows that good and evil are but different manifestations of a far greater reality." That's Mystery School 101. Light and dark aren't enemies, they're just two sides of the same coin. Seth also says, "Now it has been said often that there is a God, so there must be a devil. Or if there is good, there must be evil." This is like saying that because an apple has a top, it must have a bottom, but without any understanding of the fact that both are a portion of the apple. That's literally the Dark Crystal. The Skeksis and Mystics aren't good guys and bad guys, they're just top and bottom of the same cosmic apple, split apart when the crystal cracked. The whole film is about understanding that light and dark aren't opposites to destroy, but halves to reunite. Okay, again, you think that's just hippie new age mumbo jumbo? Well, here's where it gets even more crazy, because guess who agreed? Carl Jung. Now, we saw he was obsessed with the alchemical idea of joining together opposites to achieve psychological wholeness, but guess what else Jung wrote about? Abraxas, a Gnostic god who was both light and darkness, God and devil, all in one. A symbol of totality, of integration, of becoming whole. Jung wrote, "Abraxas begetteth truth and lying, good and evil, light and darkness, in the same word and the same act." Jung said that Abraxas shattered all opposites. He wasn't just good or just evil, he was the force behind both. But for Jung, Abraxas wasn't just a character in a story, because he symbolically represented the force of becoming whole ourselves through the union of our opposites. Sound familiar? Again, the Mystics versus Skeksis dynamic. The twist is that neither can survive without the other. The lesson isn't to kill the bad guys, it's to integrate the shadow. Because this isn't fantasy, it's not just ancient alchemy, it's psychology, it's you. So let's talk about the shadow, because the shadow is the part of yourself that most people don't want to look at. It's the anger you deny, the fear that you repress, the selfishness, the shame, the cravings, the chaos. Now, it's not evil, but it becomes dangerous when you just try to bury it. When you deny your darkness, the thing is, it doesn't go away, it just festers and ends up leaking out. And the more you try to destroy it, the stronger that it gets. For most of human history, we were taught to repress the shadow, to be pure, to be good, to be holy, to eliminate bad thoughts. But here's the truth. Carl Jung wrote, "How can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole." We are not here to kill our darkness, we are here to integrate it. That's what Jung taught. He believed that real spiritual growth wasn't just about light, it was about doing the hard inner work of facing your darkness, understanding it, and owning it. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And he didn't stop there. He said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." See, you don't get to become whole unless you've integrated both halves of yourselves. That's the whole freaking point. And that's exactly what the Dark Crystal is showing us. The hero does not kill the villains. He reunites what was divided. But it gets even crazier. Are you ready? Because the Mystics literally have the Tree of Life diagram on their clothing. Now, why does that matter? Because the Tree of Life is a diagram from a mystical system called Kabbalah that is at the beating heart of many secret societies and Western occultism. The Tree of Life is basically a spiritual map of existence and the mind and the soul, showing how divine energy flows. It's made up of 10 spheres called the Sephirot. Each one represents a different aspect of God or consciousness or reality itself. So why does this matter? Because for every sephira on the Tree of Life, there's a shadow version, a twisted, broken, distorted echo. These are called the klipot, the husks or the shells, the leftovers of divine energy that didn't integrate properly and got cast aside. It's even said they come from the shattering of the vessels. Now here's where it gets wild, because by the time the Dark Crystal begins, there's 9 mystics and 9 skeksis left. And in Kabbalah, there are 10 sephirot and 10 klipot. Now technically it's said that there are 11 klipot, but that starts dealing with very deep secrets and gets way too complicated for this video, so let's just keep it simple. So we've got a Tree of Life and we have a Tree of Death, light and shadow, sephirot and klipot. And get this, the mystics literally have the damn diagram embroidered into their robes. Like the klipot, the skeksis correspond to ego and materialism, and like the sephirot, mystics correspond to spirit and selflessness. The Gelfling hero Jen ends up balancing both to fulfill his quest. Everything in the Dark Crystal points at one thing: wholeness. Okay, if you thought that was crazy, get ready for this, because it just keeps going. But first, I want you to realize what we're doing here, because this isn't just a channel. This is a revolution of the mind. So if you're ready to help us spread hidden knowledge and make enlightenment go viral, then hit like and subscribe, because there's so much more. And if you want to help out even more, become a member for exclusive videos and free downloads on inner transformation, and check out my books. Links are in the description. All right, let's talk about Ogra, the cranky, one-eyed, witchy astronomer lady, you know, the one who's like Yoda with titties. Ogra has one eye, and in the lore, expanded in the books, it says that she burned out her eye staring directly at the first Great Conjunction a long time ago. She literally sacrificed an eye to gain cosmic knowledge. And then there's Ogra's triangulum. It's a bizarre little device that she lifts to her face like a monocle. You probably didn't think much of it the first time you saw it. Just another weird puppet prop, right? But hold up, let's look at it closely.
The Great Conjunction is the end of the world!
It's a circle inside a triangle, inside a circle, inside a triangle, spiraling in and out like a cosmic puzzle. And she even puts it up to her eye. Now, if you're even slightly conspiracy curious, that visual might have triggered something deep in your brain, because yeah, it's basically a nod to the Eye of Providence, the all-seeing eye inside of the triangle, you know, the one that people usually associate with the Illuminati. It's the one floating on the back of the dollar bill. Now, what the eye actually means is traditionally a symbol of divine insight, the third eye, and with enlightenment, with seeing behind the veil. And it gets even deeper, because that strange device of hers is also strikingly similar to the alchemical symbol of the Philosopher's Stone. Remember the whole goal of alchemy? And its diagram is a circle within a square within a triangle within a circle. This is not just cool geometry, folks. This is a metaphysical blueprint. Each shape represents a stage in the great work, the elements transformed and aligned. It's about taking the base broken and imperfect and purifying it through inner work, trial, and balance. And speaking of triangles, they're all over this movie. It's in her triangulum, the design of Ogra's observatory, it's in the triple suns, and it's even literally around the Dark Crystal itself. Why? Because the triangle represents the union of opposites. 2 points, opposites, reaching upwards to form a third. Now get this, a 19th century German philosopher called Hegel, who's my favorite philosopher by the way, made this concept the center of his entire system. He called it the dialectic. Everything evolves through a process of contradiction and resolution. See, first you have a thesis, an idea, then comes the antithesis, the opposite of that idea, its challenge, and through their clash, something new emerges called the synthesis. Not a compromise, but a higher third thing that includes and transcends both. Hegel believed the literal consciousness of the universe itself evolved through this dialectical synthesis of opposites. That's what the triangle shows us. The truth isn't found in choosing a side, it's found in the third point where they come together. And that's what the Dark Crystal is about. The mystics, the Uru, are the thesis, calm, spiritual, selfless. The skeksis are the antithesis, violent, materialistic, greedy, but powerful. And the skeks are the synthesis, the union, the triangle made manifest, spiritual, but also powerful. And then there's the crystal itself, the so-called Dark Crystal, later revealed to be the crystal of truth, but it's literally the Philosopher's Stone in disguise. The Philosopher's Stone was said to grant immortality by perfecting the soul, but the real alchemists were after something way more powerful, spiritual immortality, which is the realization that you are eternal, that you are divine. The ego can die, but the self, the true unified self, doesn't. That's the real stone, not something you hold in your hand, something you become. And the Dark Crystal shows us the Skeksis are obsessed with physical immortality. They literally try to extract life force from other creatures using the Dark Crystal. But what happens? The crystal is healed, the false immortality of the Skeksis vanishes, and the Urskeks, fully integrated, don't just live forever in the material world, they transcend and obtain spiritual immortality. This is apotheosis in a kid's movie. Watching it now, I'm floored by how overt some of these symbols are. As a kid, maybe you thought it was just a dark, cool fairy tale, but the Dark Crystal was teaching us about integration, shadow work, healing the parts of ourselves and the world. Pretty damn profound for a kid munching on cereal in front of the TV. All right, now take a breath here, all right, because we've been through a lot, through imagination and alchemy, but now we're about to venture into the maze of Labyrinth, and things are about to get even more personal and way more mystical and psychological. Ready to face the Goblin King? Let's go. All right, just hearing the title Labyrinth, you know this one's symbolic. A labyrinth is a symbol, and it's been used for centuries to represent the journey to enlightenment. And Labyrinth is the personal initiation story, complete with Jim Henson puppets and David Bowie in his ultra-tight pants. So what occult secrets are in the labyrinth? Well, the entire labyrinth itself is the first big one. In occult tradition and myth, walking a labyrinth is an initiation ritual. You traverse a confusing path and face challenges, ultimately finding the center, which represents truth and self-knowledge, before finding your way back out transformed. It's been said, in the labyrinth you don't lose yourself, you find yourself. Carl Jung, that guy again, noted that the labyrinth symbolically represents the unconscious mind. Jung even said, "The right way to wholeness is made up, unfortunately, of fateful detours and wrong turnings, a path whose labyrinthine twists and turns are not lacking in terrors." Now, does that sound familiar? Because that's exactly what Sarah, the protagonist of the film, goes through. But before we go any further, let's clear something up, because this film is called Labyrinth, not Maze. Now, not a lot of people know this, but there's actually a huge symbolic difference between the two. A maze is a puzzle. It's full of dead ends, wrong choices, wrong turns, and it's made to confuse you. But a labyrinth, in the classical sense, has a single path. No wrong turns, no tricks, but it's a winding journey inward to the center and then back out again. It's not about getting lost, it's about getting transformed. In spiritual traditions, labyrinths are used for meditation, ritual, and inner work. Walking a labyrinth isn't about solving anything, it's about facing yourself. But here's the twist. The movie Labyrinth blends the two. Sarah thinks she's entering a confusing maze full of external challenges, riddles, traps, and goblins. But the truth is, she's in a labyrinth of the self. Every character, an obstacle, an illusion she faces is another reflection of her own inner landscape.
Which way do you want to go?
The film is essentially one big Jungian test. Sarah has to shed her childish delusions, face her fears and desires, and assert her will to rescue her baby brother. In occult terms, she's the initiate passing through trials in the mystic maze. Now, in Labyrinth, the movie, Sarah's 13-hour journey to the center, the Goblin King Castle, is her pilgrimage to self-mastery. And yeah, I said 13-hour journey because in Jareth's magical realm, clocks have 13 hours instead of 12.
You have 13 hours in which to solve the labyrinth.
And at first glance, that might just seem like a silly, quirky fantasy world touch. But there's something deeper going on, something most people totally miss. See, we're used to thinking in solar time, 12 hours, 24 hours, a calendar that follows the sun, but the moon runs on a different rhythm. There are about 12.4 moon cycles in a year. That means that most years have 12 full moons, but every few years there's a 13th moon. But 13 isn't unlucky, it's lunar, it's feminine. Some modern lunar-inspired calendars actually divide the year into 13 months of about 28 days to echo the rhythm of the moon, and loosely, the menstrual cycle, which follows a similar rhythm. And get this, in some mystical and Gnostic traditions, Mary Magdalene is considered the 13th disciple, the hidden apostle, the suppressed feminine, and the bearer of secret wisdom. So when Labyrinth gives Sarah 13 hours, it's telling you she's no longer in the world of clocks and schedules. She's entered a lunar realm, the domain of the goddess, of cycles of initiation and inner transformation. Now let's talk about one of the most underrated scenes in the whole film, the junkyard. Because see, Sarah finds herself in this wasteland alone until she meets the trash lady, the hunched hoarding creature who piles all her old toys and books and treasures on her back, literally strapping her to her past. Now this isn't just a weird scene, this is psychological warfare. The trash lady tells Sarah, "Here dearie, isn't this what you're looking for? Your precious teddy bear, your music box, your books, your room?" And Sarah starts to fall for it. She starts to forget the mission. She starts to cling to the comforts of the old self. And this is the trap that so many of us fall into, mistaking our baggage, our egoic identity, for our true self, thinking the stuff that we've carried, the pain, the nostalgia, the roles we were handed, thinking that that's who we really are. The trash lady is the part of the unconscious that says, don't grow, don't change, stay in your room, stay who you were. But Sarah wakes up, she realizes this is junk, this isn't me, and this is how we begin to realize our true self. Now let's talk about Jareth, the Goblin King, played by David Bowie at peak glam.
Don't defy me.
Jareth is charming, dangerous, and a tempter. He's basically a devilish figure, beautiful, prideful, and offering the protagonist the easy way out at the price of submission. Throughout the film, Jareth tries to seduce or intimidate Sarah into giving up and forgetting her quest. Now, this is straight out of occult lore. The initiate is often tempted by a figure offering them power or knowledge to stray from their path. Think of the devil card in tarot, or Goethe's Mephistopheles offering Faust worldly pleasures for his soul. Jareth literally says to Sarah in the end scene, "Look what I'm offering you, your dreams. I ask for so little. Just let me rule you and you can have everything that you want."
Look what I'm offering you. Your dreams.
And my kingdom is great.
I ask for so little. Just let me rule you. And you can have everything that you want.
This is a classic Faustian bargain. He basically promises her a life of fantasy if she'll only fear and love him and do what he says. Now, this is extremely similar to what the devil tells Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. The devil showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, and he said to him, "All these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." But the key here is to see through the temptation and the lies. Remember the masquerade ballroom scene? The people wear these grotesque masks that actually resemble goblin faces. And the moment that Sarah realizes it's fake, she shatters the illusion by throwing a chair through the glass, and it all collapses. She literally wakes up from the seduction. This is a total initiation moment. The ability to see through the illusion is key to any esoteric path. Labyrinth is also packed with eye imagery and hidden watchers. Jareth uses crystal orbs to spy on Sarah. Sometimes we see the orb floating, observing, very all-seeing eye energy. There's also literal eyes all over the Labyrinth walls. And get this, the filmmakers hid David Bowie's face in a bunch of scenes, as in the outlines of Jareth's face are actually camouflaged in the environment of the movie watching Sarah. I mean, check it out. Fans have spotted his face in rocks and hedge walls throughout the whole movie. And then there's Jareth's goblin form, because yeah, he's not just some glittery goblin king with tight pants, he's also an owl watching Sarah from the shadows, flying through her bedroom window, always observing, always just out of reach. Now, that might seem random until you realize the Owl of Minerva was one of the only known symbols used by the original Bavarian Illuminati. It symbolized hidden knowledge and enlightenment. The owl sees in the dark, after all. It watches while others are blind. But over time, that symbol's meaning has shifted. Today, in modern culture, especially in conspiracy circles, the owl has become a symbol not of illumination, but of manipulation. It's tied to the idea of the elites watching from the shadows, hoarding knowledge and pulling strings. Here, Jareth is the manipulator, the hidden hand, the one who bends the labyrinth to his will while pretending to give Sarah choices. He never forces her, he tempts her, seduces her, distracts her. He is the owl, just not of wisdom, but of surveillance, of psychological domination dressed up as a fantasy. And in the end, how does Sarah defeat Jareth? By remembering the line from her story, the book she was was reading at the very start of the movie. You have no power over me. Just like that.
You have no power over me.
See, this is just like when Jesus says, "Away with you, Satan." At that moment, the illusion shatters. Literally, the room cracks apart into floating pieces as she speaks those words of power, and the entire movie builds up to Sarah realizing her own sovereign will. Jareth is only as powerful as she believes him to be. In ceremonial magic or even religious exorcism, the practitioner often commands the spirit with unwavering will, declaring that it has no authority. Sarah basically performs a self-exorcism of her own fear and Jareth's hold. Labyrinth reminds us that when we finally stand up and say, "No, I am the author of my story," those illusions lose their grip. Bowie in owl form then flies off, the spell is broken, Sarah's home, she's rescued her brother, and she's different than she was before. She gained wisdom and some goblin friends who apparently can still hang out in her room. Her friends like Ludo and Hoggle appear in her bedroom to celebrate. What is that all about? Some people think it means that she's gone insane or is imagining them, but I see it as the fact that she's integrated the lessons and allies from her journey into her psyche. The goblins and creatures represent aspects of her: courage, kindness, happiness, and now she's embraced them rather than rejected them. It's positive integration. The final spoken words of the movie are the goblins laughing and saying, "Bye-bye," and Jareth's not dead or anything. He's just no longer a threat. Evil, temptation, control, those things are always gonna exist. The owl's still out there, but they have no power over her or over you. See, all these messages in these films were hidden there for you, for all of us to discover when we were ready. These films planted the seeds of wisdom in young minds under the cover of fantasy and adventure, and that's the final twist. The NeverEnding Story is your story. The magic only matters if you carry it forward. So it's time to fight the nothing in your life, solve your labyrinth, and heal what's broken. Wake up and use your power. Now, there were so many more hidden messages in these movies I didn't have time to get into. So did you catch them? If you did, drop them in the comments below. I want to know what you saw, and let me know if there are any other movies you want me to break down next. But if you thought that was crazy, did you know that the movie The Matrix was inspired by ancient heretics called the Gnostics, who believed the world was a cosmic prison run by evil entities called archons? Yeah, go watch my video, The Occult Origins of the Matrix, right now.